In a stone workshop cut into the mountains of 9th century China, a handful of Taoist alchemists lean over a mixture they've spent years refining, convinced it's the key to eternal life. Then it ignites. Beards singe, the workshop nearly burns to the ground. Nobody in this room is trying to build a weapon, they're chasing immortality. What they stumble onto instead is huoyao, fire medicine, a substance that will eventually end the age of knights, topple castle walls, and arm every continent on Earth. Here's how a failed elixir became a gun. The first thing to understand is that nobody in that room recognized what they'd made. It didn't look like a weapon, it looked like a recipe. Roughly 75% saltpeter, 15% charcoal, 10% sulfur. The saltpeter does the real work. It's an oxidizer, and it lets the burn happen fast enough to create a sudden, violent expansion of gas. That expanding gas is the whole story. Every firework, every siege weapon, every rifle that follows traces back to that one reaction, and for a long time afterward, nobody has any idea what to do with it beyond watching it burn. For generations, that's exactly what happens. The reaction stays decorative. It lights up festivals, sends smoke signals across valleys, adds color to religious ceremonies. Nobody yet sees a battlefield in it. That takes a war. The war arrives under the Song Dynasty. Between the 10th and 12th centuries, military engineers strap gunpowder-packed bamboo tubes to spears, and the fire lance is born. Light it in close combat, and it sprays flame at anyone within reach. Defenders use them at the Siege of Dayan in 1132, and the shock alone rattles attackers who've trained their whole lives to fight with blades. It's a small addition that changes everything. Someone starts packing pottery shards and pellets into those tubes, and pure fire becomes something that can wound at a distance. That's the real conceptual leap, the one every future firearm builds on. But bamboo has a ceiling. It can only hold so much charge before it splits. Bronze doesn't have that problem. Once craftsmen learn to cast metal tubes, the hand cannon appears, and by the 13th century, it's standard across China, alongside heavier siege weapons like the thunderclap bomb. A battlefield fix has just become an industry, and industries travel. These upcoming war industries travel fastest on horseback. When the Mongols invade China, they absorb the weapon, then carry it west as they conquer, spreading a Chinese invention across Eurasia faster than any caravan could manage. A cousin technology rides along with it, rockets and fire arrows, which spread through Korea and India and resurfaced centuries later in European warfare, and eventually in rocketry. By the time the Mongol wave recedes, gunpowder is no longer a regional secret. It's now moving along the same routes as paper, printing, and the compass, and by the late 13th century it reaches Europe, where it starts dismantling a military order that stood for centuries. The early hand cannons that arrive are crude and hard to aim, but even in that primitive form, they crack castle walls that had held for generations. Mounted knights, the backbone of medieval warfare, find their armor suddenly meaningless. Fortresses adapt or fall. The tall stone castle gives way to the low, angled star fort, built to absorb cannon fire instead of standing tall against it. One problem is solved. A new one takes its place, because the gun itself is still clumsy. Fixing that clumsiness takes until the late 15th century, when the matchlock arrives. Earlier hand cannons need two hands and perfect timing. One to aim, one to touch a burning cord to the powder. The matchlock solves that by clamping the cord to the gun itself, so pulling a trigger lowers it automatically. For the first time, one soldier can aim and fire with real precision. And the design spreads fast. Ottoman janissaries carry it into the Battle of Goa in 1510. Portuguese traders bring it to Japan in 1543, where local smiths refine it into the Tanegashima. And China eventually reabsorbs an improved version of its own invention to fight Mongol raids on its northern frontier. These new muskets are heavy, some need a forked rest just to hold steady, but they punch through plate armor that swords never could. Reloading leaves a soldier exposed though, so musketeers still fight alongside pikemen for protection, a pairing that shapes European battlefields for over a century. And the matchlock has its own flaw waiting to be fixed. It needs an open flame at all times, which makes it useless in the rain and gives away a soldier's position at night. The wheel lock, arriving in the early 1500s, fixes half that problem. It sparks the charge by striking a spinning wheel against pyrite, no burning cord required. And cavalry loves it, though its cost keeps it out of most infantry hands. The real fix comes around 1610, when French gunsmith Marin Le Bourgeois develops the flintlock. A spring-loaded hammer strikes flint against steel, sparking the charge instantly. No flame at all. Faster and more reliable in bad weather, it spreads quickly once the Dutch army adopts it in the 1630s, and stays dominant for 2 centuries, arming soldiers through the Napoleonic Wars and the American Revolution. Around the same time, one more change ties it all together. the socket bayonet, which fits around the outside of the barrel instead of plugging into it, so a soldier can fire and still keep the blade ready. Armies no longer need separate pikemen. Every soldier can shoot and stab. Historians call it the infantry revolution. The flintlock's long reign finally ends in the early 1800s with the percussion cap, a small chemical charge that ignites instantly under a hammer strike, the last major leap in a chain that started nearly 1,000 years earlier. Step back and the pattern is clear. None of it started with anyone trying to build a weapon. It was accident, then accumulation. Bamboo to bronze, open flame to spring mechanism, matchlock to flintlock, each fix solving a problem soldiers had actually run into. Chinese engineers, Mongol conquerors, Ottoman janissaries, Japanese gunsmiths, and European craftsmen all added their piece, none of them working from a blueprint, all of them just patching the last failure. Every rifle on a shooting range, every artillery piece, every firework over a stadium tonight is downstream of that first mistake in a mountain workshop. That's not a weapons story. That's what happens when people just want to live forever.